So.
We have a quorum. So we can.
Chair, we have a quorum. We can get going if you want.
All right, I think we need to. So let's do that. I'll call the meeting to order. And ask Brenda if you take roll for us, please.
Board Member Brisky,
Present.
Board Member Freeman, Board Member Jolie,
Present.
Board Member Mercier,
Present.
Board Member Ridley,
Present.
Councilmember Russell, Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Mayor Sierra, Vice Chair Havenick, Chair Moore.
Present.
Let me just mention that Board Member Freeman is on the call now as well.
Yes, present, yes.
Great. All right, a little tight, but we pulled it off. Let's see, can we move to approval of the minutes from the March 12th meeting? Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Can I get a second?
Second.
All right. Any open for discussion, any edits, changes? All right, hearing none, can all in favor of approving the minutes for March 12th, please say aye.
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 Okay, wonderful, motion carries. Right, we still have the right crew for that. Let's see, moving on to a public forum. Brenda, do we have anyone from the public to speak to us tonight?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you. And then Peter, keep me honest. We've got, we're going to try to clear some stuff out. We do have some topics that are pushed down that have more conversation needed. So I think we want to try to move through the first couple items pretty quickly. But with that, I will turn it over to Stephanie Ellis, I believe.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. And yeah, I'll be covering the next two items and I'm going to try to run through them fairly quickly. So if you guys have questions or want additional detail, just let me know. But I'm Stephanie Ellis. I'm an engineer with Englewood Utilities. This first item is City Ditch Crossing Agreement. I also want to give credit to Tasha Neal. She's another engineer on our team who did a lot of the heavy lifting for this item. As you are aware, the city ditch is a critical piece of infrastructure for the city. We use it to take water to our water treatment plant as well as deliver water to other users along the ditch. Excel Energy is proposing to install a new 6-inch gas main crossing underneath the city ditch. They're proposing to install it about 29 feet below the ditch, and they would be installing it by horizontal directional drilling, a trenchless method of installation. They would be coordinating with us for this work so that we can go out and inspect it, and their contractor would be liable for any damage to the ditch. This work is proposed to take place in the city of Littleton at West Prentice Avenue and South Prescott Street, as shown here. We typically require 2 agreements for crossings of the city ditch infrastructure. The first is a crossing and license agreement. This defines the terms and conditions for crossing the city ditch, as well as we require a temporary construction easement for this work. This gives the contractor permission to access our easement and also include terms and conditions necessary to protect the ditch. The Does anyone have any questions?
I'll just add, this is pretty standard work that we do. So we have crossings of the ditch fairly regularly, and this is our standard process.
The one thing I'm curious about when these easements come in front of us is kind of the what's in it for us aspect. Is it just about cooperating with them, or do we have some obligation to offer them an easement that we otherwise wouldn't?
Yeah, so we aren't required to allow someone to cross our infrastructure, but as another utility partner, we want to work with other entities, and these ensure that our infrastructure is protected
Okay.
while other infrastructure is installed, which in a lot of circumstances, depending on where it is, it may be beneficial to Englewood residents as well if it's for a development or something like that.
What I would say on Excel is that this is we do work with Excel fairly often, and we need things from Excel too. Just most recently with this power outage that we just had, the water plant came online. It went off at about 10:13 at night and came back online about noon the next day. Typically, when the water plant goes off, my house goes off as well. My house didn't come on until noon yesterday. And so they told us that they would bump up the priority of the Allen plant, and it appears like they're doing that. So there was some kind of a damage to a lot of the system in Englewood. And as a result, they prioritized getting the plant back online. So this is an easy thing for us to be cooperative with them on, as we, they need stuff and we need stuff.
So the bottom line is it's about maintaining a good relationship and kind of providing some professional courtesy.
Yeah, plus we have a long linear facility. So if we were to refuse, they'd have to go, way south or way north. And it's a common issue with utilities.
Okay. The other question I guess I have is 29 feet seems like a pretty hefty depth. Is that common, or is there a reason why they're doing it that far down?
I believe that this particular gas line is proposed to be really deep because I think it's going to continue further on past the point where it crosses the ditch, and I think it actually goes under the railroad.
Okay.
I think might be why it's so deep.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I first looked at this, I thought it was a misprint on the units. And
I did too.
and Sarah said, no, it's 29 feet. If it's 29 feet, that's even better for us because
Okay.
then it's not close to the ditch.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, can I get a motion to recommend that city council approve by ordinance water and sewer board agenda items 5A1 and 5A2 as written?
I move.
I second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. 5B, and Stephanie, still with you.
It is. Now we're going to be talking about the Santa Fe Park drain line relocation. To provide some background, there are two proposed developments in the city of Littleton off South Santa Fe Drive and Mineral Avenue. These are the River Park development and the Santa Fe Park development. Englewood has multiple pieces of critical infrastructure through this area. These include the city ditch, the McLellan Reservoir drain line, and the McLellan pump station. And between these two developments, city ditch is proposed to be relocated and piped, and the McLellan drain line is proposed to be relocated and piped with new material. Today we'll be focusing on the Santa Fe Park development. This is a residential development that's being developed by Toll Southwest, also known as Toll, and TV Angeline, also known as T-Ball, later in this presentation. In order to develop this property, there are several proposed improvements to Englewood's infrastructure. The first is the relocation and piping of city ditch. This was approved last June by Water Sewer Board and City Council and was constructed last year. There's also a proposed land dedication around the McLellan pump station. This was approved last June by Water Sewer Board and City Council. And the third item, which we're focusing on today, is the relocation and replacement of the McLellan Reservoir drain line. And to provide a refresher and some background on the drain line itself, It runs between McLellan Reservoir and the South Platte River. It's used to convey water from the McLellan pump station up to the McLellan Reservoir. It's also used for reservoir releases associated with our flood control requirements and our water rights decrees and agreements. And it's equipped with an interconnection with Centennial Water and Sanitation District that can be used in emergency situations to convey water back to McLellan Reservoir. For this work, there are several agreements that are required. The first are relinquishment and grant of easements with toll and T-ball. These would relinquish our existing drain line easement that we have through their properties and then grant a new easement to the new location where the drain line would be relocated. The contract for construction is also required for this work. Toll would be constructing the new drain line with oversight and inspection from Englewood and ultimate approval from Englewood. And this contract for construction includes the terms and conditions associated with this construction, as well as the plans and specifications that were developed by the design engineer, Hazen and Sawyer, and just other terms for this construction work. And the final agreement is an interconnection agreement with Centennial Water and Sanitation District. While there's an existing interconnection with Centennial Water and Sanitation District, we don't have an agreement in place that truly defines what the ownership, operation, and maintenance of this interconnection looks like. And so this agreement puts that in place, and it defines that Centennial Water and Sanitation District they would own, operate, and maintain the interconnection. That's how we operate it now. If it's needed to be operated or maintained, Centennial does it. This just puts it in writing. And so there's no change there, but it also defines what that responsibility would look like on both entities if we wanted to utilize the interconnection in emergency situations. Later this year, we hope to bring other agreements to you related to city ditch and drain line utility crossings, similar to the one we just discussed with Excel, and also the agreements associated with the River Park development. Are there any questions?
Are we saving money by having developers bear some of the cost of moving city ditch around?
They bear all the cost, so we save a lot of money.
But they're not doing the full length. They're just doing the portions that cover their land. So
They're doing the portions that are within their property, so it's advantageous for them because our ditch runs right through the middle of their property. So to help them develop their property more effectively, they move our ditch and then they put it in a pipe for us. And so we let them move it as long as they put in a pipe in a different location, then they can put it where we like it. So it's actually it's a win-win for everybody.
okay.
Because it's a significant reach of the ditch that we don't have to pipe as part of our larger city ditch project because they take care of it for us.
Any other questions? All right. Can I get a motion to recommend the city council approve by ordinance water and sewer board agenda items 5B1 through 4 as written?
Move the motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Now we're on to 5C. Pieter?
I'm going to turn this one over to Deputy Director Sarah Stone to present.
There we go.
So she's going to take this one.
All right, good evening, everyone. I will just mention that in the room tonight, we also have Steve Price and Jasmine Gamboa from Hazen and Sawyer. They are program managers for the lead reduction program and have been instrumental in getting our funding put together and our cost defined for the state revolving fund loans that we are bringing forward tonight. So quick background, just on the lead reduction program, we are advancing the replacement of lead service lines to maximize available funding, and it's a proactive step to protect public health. We anticipate that this program might take up to 5 years, and we are planning to begin lead line replacements this summer. Here's where we are in the schedule currently. So we hired Hazen and Sawyer as our program manager and kicked off the program about a year ago. Since then, we have completed our lead line inventory development as well as the field verification. That's where we went out and potholed 375 homes last fall. We also submitted the application in December for the state revolving fund loan program, and then that was approved in March. Meanwhile, we've also posted the lead service line RFP, and so we are now at that teal dot where we are bringing the agreements and ordinance to approve the SRF loans in April to Water Sewer Board tonight and City Council in April. And then next month, we anticipate bringing the lead service line contract for construction in May. We got responses in the last few weeks, and we've found a contract there that we believe is going to be very advantageous to the cost of the program. So we're excited to bring that to you next month. And then we plan to kick off construction in the summer. Just a reminder of our lead line inventory results from earlier this year. We anticipate replacing up to about 3,000 lines. On the map, the green is either assumed non-lead or non-lead. And then the red dots that you see intermingled in there are the assumed lead or confirmed lead. And then there's some triangles that are unknown. So those we're including in the inventory currently that we will have to replace. We've split the city into 10 replacement zones. And for 2024, as shown on the map, we will target that north central area. So that brings us to the funding. So we've been calling this the SRF, but formally it's the Drinking Water Revolving Fund. So that is administered by the Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority. With the bipartisan infrastructure law that passed in 2021, that authorized about $50 billion to be spent in the next 5 years for water infrastructure programs. That was dispersed to the states to be administered through their revolving fund programs. So through that bill, there's also principal forgiveness available. So Colorado issues funds through that Drinking Water Revolving Fund program, and that's where those BIL or bipartisan infrastructure law funds get dispersed. And then they also offer leverage loans for water improvements. Loosely defined here are some of the loan terms that we've been discussing with CORPTA currently. So it's a low interest rates that are locked at the time of closing, interest accrues as funds are dispersed, and the loan repayment term is up to 30 years. So for Englewood Water's loans, this is the package that we've put together. So the total funding anticipated is 40 million. The principal amount of that is not to exceed about 30.55 million. We've rounded up to just account for any changes that might occur before the bond sale. So on the left-hand side, there's the leverage loan portion at 23 million. That's a 30-year term, and the interest rate will be determined at the bond sale. So at this point, we've assumed a maximum of 5.5%, but we anticipate it to be less than that. At 5.5%, the estimated debt service annually would be about $1.6 million a year. So for this loan, because we've gotten good pricing on the contract for lead service line replacements, we are anticipating that the program will cost less than $40 million. This loan can be used for other eligible water projects. On the other side of the graphic there, we've got the BIL or bill funding. So 10 million of that is principal forgiveness. That is the maximum amount available under that program. We qualify for that being because they have a point scale, and we qualified for the maximum amount. And then the direct loan for that would be 7.55 million, again with a 30-year term. That interest rate is 3.5%, and so the estimated debt service for that is $409,000 per year. We are requesting council approve this through an emergency ordinance. And these are the reasons why. So CORPTA issues bonds typically every 6 months. We would like to be included in their bond sale. this spring. That provides us some cost and interest rate certainty for those borrowed funds. There's a pool of borrowers that are anticipated to be included in the spring sale. So that's City of Greeley, South Adams Water and Sanitation District, Town of Left Bowie, and Upper Thompson Sanitation District. So including Englewood, that total bond sale or that package is around $100 million. So Corpta is planning to post the preliminary official statement on April 30th. So the timing for this is we bring this to Water Sewer Board tonight. We take it to council for first reading next Monday. And then that following Monday, we would ask that it be approved by emergency ordinance so that we could meet that preliminary offering statement April 30th. And then the competitive sale of the bonds is planned for May 8th with a closing date of May 23rd, 2024. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
I'll just add that this is something that Sarah and the team have been working on for the last 4 months, and this is really, really great news. If you look at the date of when that bipartisan infrastructure law went into effect, it was November of 2021. And so we're now accessing that money 2.5 years later. And I think we're second in the state. And so it gives you a sense for how long it takes. And we were second in line behind Denver Water because we had all this ready to go and we're quote unquote shovel ready with this project, which unlocks that $10 million of principal forgiveness for us. So I think the work that she and the team have done to get us well positioned for this money has really paid off in the sense that we're eligible for that $10 million of principal forgiveness. That's free money coming into our community to address this issue.
Wonderful. Let's see, I'm not seeing any hands. Can I get a motion to recommend that City Council approve by emergency ordinance drinking water revolving fund loan agreements and with the Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority to fund a lead reduction program in the amount of $40,000 with $10 million in principal forgiveness?
So moved.
I get a second?
I'll second.
There we go. Thank you. Any further discussion? Again, I'll echo these comments. Nice work in getting us to this point on these funds and taking advantage of these opportunities. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. On to new business item 6A.
Thank you, Chair. We're here tonight to go through our preliminary outline of the 5-year capital request for the water fund, the sewer fund, as well as the stormwater fund. And with us tonight, Victor Rochelle, the Director of Public Works, is actually at another meeting. So we have Tim Host here tonight. Who, you want to come up to the table, Tim, and join us? Who's the Deputy Director in Public Works, and he will be presenting the stormwater fund capital program once we get through the water and the sewer. So we're gonna kick off with water, and that's probably the most complex of the funds that we have. So let's yeah. So this is what we're gonna do, and then we're gonna also talk about. We'll talk about South Platte Renew since it's such a large line item on the sewer enterprise fund, and then, like I said, Tim will cover the stormwater fund. So if you remember, we've shown this slide a couple times. This is where over the last 4 years, where our approach for the water fund has evolved to a longer term strategy. And I think it falls into these two buckets. One being modernize the utility, address the lack of investment, address the lack of the significant amount of deferred maintenance that had occurred, replace those aging assets and get onto a sustainable level of replacement of that infrastructure, while also optimizing what we do have and hiring people that can help us optimize what we do have, and then strike a balance between what we contract out and what we perform internally as a utility for long-term sustainability. The second aspect of this is improve our customer experience. We provide a product to our customers, and it's no secret that that product has been challenging in the past, and we are making concerted efforts with our projects and our programs and our staffing to address the three main issues, which is taste, odor, and hardness, and such that over time our customers will start to experience a much better product for the money that they are paying for that product. Additionally, we're improving our customer service, our financial transparency and sustainability, as well as our billing interface. So we want to make sure that the customers also understand how their money is being spent and where it's being spent, and then also get clarity into how they can have influence over their water usage over the course of the year. So what we are obviously focused on is some of the projects that are significant around the taste, odor, and hardness. City ditch piping is one of the most significant. We're also focused on lead service lines, removing that hazard out from our system ahead of the federal timeline. We think that by addressing this on the front end will put us in a much better position to leverage the money that we just talked about, and then ultimately that aging infrastructure. Our major programs or projects that we have going this year is AMI. That improves the customer interface. It also improves the accuracy of our metering and our billing to our customers. We are improving the space for that staffing that we've ramped up over the last 4 years through remodels, additions, and one small new administrative building at the Allen plant. And that will get us out of the 4 temporary trailers that we are in right now. And so that project is moved, those sets of projects are moving forward right now. And then, like I talked about, city ditches are our largest, single largest project right now, which helps us from a taste, odor, and hardness perspective, but it really helps us from a system resiliency perspective as well, because we have a closed loop system from Chatfield all the way to the Allen plant. Next slide. How are we doing that? We didn't have all the cash on hand to do all that. So we have, since 2020, been going after available funding sources that are grant sources as well as low interest loans. And so you can see what we've done to date, 60.5 million through the WIFIA program, 38.5 of which goes to water, 22 that goes to sewer. That 22 to sewer supports Englewood's 50% of investments that are needed at South Platte Renew. We just talked about the 40 million in the state revolving fund to include 10 million of grant principal forgiveness. We also in that time period had 3 million from ARPA that also supported these projects. And that coupled with the rate increases that we enacted in 2020, as well as the annual increases that we've put in place to help sustain this over time, have really helped us get to the point where we're able to address a huge backlog of work. So our projects as proposed right now, you can see these are our WIFIA funded projects. So the WIFIA funded projects are ones that we have to get approved through the EPA. They have to go through an environmental clearance process. And these are all the projects that fall into that program area over the next 5 years. We actually have until 2028 to spend all the WIFIA funds. So we do have a fair amount of time to spend that money. The great thing about WIFIA too is we haven't drawn on it yet. We will probably draw this year. And because we haven't drawn on it, we haven't accrued any interest on that available money. WIFIA, it's probably a simplistic analogy, but I liken it to a home equity line of credit. It's available, and as soon as you start drawing on it, that's when you start paying interest on it. You can see the projects that are in there. We have the space improvements, the EI&C improvements. This is the electrical controls and interface. The process improvements at the plant to include solids handling. This is what addresses, we've talked about this a lot, the centrifuge project that's addressing our backlog of solids. Water meters, that's the MI program. A lot of these have started in 2024, and that's why you're not seeing the full dollar amount of those programs, but they're finishing in 2025, and then some are continuing beyond that. And then distribution system improvements, we are making sustained investment over time into the distribution system. We have a number of areas that need some help and attention, as well as we have ongoing water supply projects. The most significant of which in the near term is we own that Meadow, we're a part owner in that Meadow Creek system up in the mountains that's operated by Denver Water, and Denver Water does projects through that system, and we have to have funding available at the time that they're making improvements to that system. Since they operate it and maintain it, we have to fund when those improvements are necessary, and they have some coming up in the next couple of years, which are improvements to the Meadow Creek system. So you can see all that totals to a subtotal of 53 million over the next 5 years. It's broken into cash and fund balance, which is about 25 million. The most significant of which of those is the City Ditch Piping Project. But those are ones that we will not be accessing the WIFI loan or the SRF because they're not defined in those loan documents. So then the last piece of this is the lead program. The lead program, again, will start in 2024. The total program amount that we anticipate is 40 million. As you look into the 5-year program through 25 and 26, we anticipate spending another 30 million, and that will clear out our lead service line problem in the city. We have the ability to stretch this if we need to. However, like Sarah mentioned, we had a really good set of bids on the lead program itself. One of the contractors that is likely the contractor we're going to recommend for approval has availability to help us accelerate this program, which is actually really good news. If we can get it done faster, really competitive rates, and they are one of Denver Water's approved, so they have experience doing this. So it's not someone that we're just we're guessing as to whether they can do it. They're a good contractor for them, and we're just happy that they have availability for us. Okay, and then on the sewer fund side, the vast majority of the sewer fund work is the South Platte Renew CIP budget, which is 50-50 funding of that. You can see there's the proportionate amounts of the improvements for the space for the staff that work at the Allen plant and the service center. And as well as the water meters, because the sewer funds sewer charges are based on the water charges that come through the meters. And so there's a proportionate share of those projects that are assigned to the sewer fund. And then the bottom line is our ongoing pipe and manhole rehab, of which we'll be talking about that in the second item this evening, because we do have some issues with some sewer pipes throughout the city. Okay, so how do we get to where we are today, and where are we going? So if you recall, this is a summary. You've seen this timeline before. So we started all this process back in late 2019. We began the stormwater the 3 master plans, including stormwater, in September of 2019. We began the rate and fee study in February of 2020, completed the master plans, then went through the process of making that first really substantial adjustment to rates and fees to help us get into a place where we were charging more similar to where the rest of the Front Range is, as well as creating a certain amount of sustainability. We had to do that in order to unlock the ability to access a lot of this debt and these funding sources, because if we didn't have the rates, the rate revenue available, then we wouldn't be approved for these loan amounts. So all of this ties together over time in terms of our financial plan that has got us to where we are. We then looked at connector district rate analyses. If you remember those, we changed the way we charge our connector districts versus our in-city customers. We adopted those new rates for connector districts in 2022. We then closed on the WIFIA loan in May of 2022, and then we keep moving forward. And we have initiated some substantial programs and projects to include the taste, odor, and hardness improvements, of which there are many, as well as our water treatment process optimization projects. We are planning to go live with our billing system imminently. That's at least what the contractor has told us. We then issued our SRF application for the lead program and have we're working towards revision of our water and sewer rate structures to get away from a declining block rate structure for water usage. We are the only ones in the state that still has that. And our water efficiency plan outlined that we need to adjust that to an inclining block rate, which is, common for this area. We're also looking at our flat rate customer conversions, implementation of the water and sewer CIP, our AMI program, our lead service lines, and then we're looking at monthly billing changes for our connector districts. So what does that look like in a project in terms of projects? So in 2020, if you recall, we did a master plan, identified a whole bunch of work that needed to be done. That was at a 50,000 foot level because there was a consultant coming in and taking a quick look and saying, here's the places we think you need to work. Over time, with our staffing that we've hired internally, we've refined those projects and programs to what you see here to address a myriad of aspects of the water system that were being ignored or severely underinvested in. And so you can see that whole list of projects and programs that is either initiated, underway. Some of those are completed, but many of those will be completed in the next few years, which is a monumental shift and a significant amount of work to be done in a short period of time. So what does that look like in terms of from a funding perspective? So if you look at this graph as project need over time. So we knew we had a backlog and we were trying to knock out a whole bunch of stuff in a short period of time. So starts in 2020, goes through about 2027. You can see that that effort on working through that backlog. And the green that you see there is the fund balance we had available to accomplish that amount of work. So obviously that's not enough money to even start to address the magnitude of the challenges and the deferred maintenance and the deferred investment that the utility required. So we started working on it. So the first thing we did, like I said, in 2020, was we changed our rates to bring them up to a point where they're still really, really low in the front range. However, they are such that they gave us a revenue stream that we could start to unlock some of this debt. And so then we ended up with some ARPA money, $3 million there. And then the next big amount was the WIFIA funding. And so that was $37.8 million for WIFIA. And you can see we're starting to get to the point where we're able to fund that backlog of work and that list of projects that you saw on a previous slide. The next step in that is the bill funding. So this is the bipartisan infrastructure law funding, of which there's 10 million of principal forgiveness in there. And so you can see the principal forgiveness is the lighter peach color. The orange is the low interest federal loan. And then the next piece that we put in was the SRF loan itself, which is that 22.4 million. The 17.5 and 22.4 is what we just talked about in the last item. So you can see over the last few years, we have assembled a significant amount of revenue and funding, whether it be through revenue or through debt, to help address that mountain of backlog work in a short period of time. That leads us with the white space, which is our funding gap areas. So the first step of that is what we would be proposing this year, which would be a lead reduction fee that helps us unlock all this money that we just talked about with the SRF to help pay the debt service on that money through the life of that loan. So it's a 30-year loan. The way we have this modeled is that this fee would be charged on every customer's bill for the life of that loan. And then once it's done, it goes away. So that fee we have proposed at $5 a month. So you have your capital investment fee, now you have a lead reduction fee, and that helps us address some of the need for debt service, thank you. So that's another layer of revenue long-term that helps us again build a sustainable revenue model for the water utility. That still leaves us with a couple funding gaps. So you can see the pink, the light pink, the dark pink, and the blue. So the light pink is about 5.5 million. We think in the time frame, and that starts in 2025 and goes through about 2027. We think that we're in a pretty good place to be able to accommodate or refine our projects to mitigate the majority of that funding gap to a point where we're still accomplishing the vast majority of our projects. We're hoping that some of them come in a little bit less costly than what they're scheduled for. And that gets us to a point of, we think we're solid to about 2027, 2028-ish timeframe. So about 4 years from now, 3 or 4 years from now. So then you can see that dark pink. We see that dark pink as probably our next debt issuance. And so that debt issuance bridges us in that last part of this needs and funding gap to get us to a point of about the 2020 or 2031, 2032 timeframe, to which you'll see the blue. And when we look at this long term, the issue is when you get to 2031 and 2032, the challenge is that we don't have a sustainable long-term revenue to address just ongoing capital needs that we would expect for a long-term sustainable capital investment in the water system. So we're not talking about $30 million. We're talking about $4 to $5 million a year annually. Now we could issue debt all the way up through probably 2037, 2038. But that is an unsustainable model because those items would be predictable needs that we should have a balanced funding for to be sustainably funded. That also leaves with all of this, we still have our big thing that we pay attention to is our debt coverage ratio. And when we issue too much debt, our debt coverage ratio gets down to our limits, which is 1.15 for the WIFIA loan. So we can't go below a 1.15 debt coverage ratio for WIFIA. We are in these models right now. Our debt coverage is actually pretty good, which gives us the ability to issue that dark pink set of debt probably in the 2028 timeframe. And then long term, that flexibility in that debt coverage ratio affords us the ability to, if something comes along like PFAS, like whatever the next thing is, that's a regulatory driver that causes us to need to invest a significant amount of money in the water utility to address that new regulatory driver or need, then that would be what we would see a debt issuance to leave that availability in the debt coverage ratio so that we could issue debt to address an unpredicted need. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get to the point where we're not using debt to address predicted needs. And that's where you look in that 2031 and the out years of building towards a sustainable model for the utility in the long run. But as a whole, what you can see is from 2020 to 2024, we've assembled a lot of money to address a lot of things in a short period of time. We anticipate about a 7-year period to go from we don't even know what our problems are to we've addressed a significant number of the problems to modernize the utility in a financially sustainable manner that has not in any way spiked water rates or water rates for City of Englewood customers. It's what we do in these out years that we're continuing to plan for, and we'll continue to work with the Water and Sewer Board and the council to help us get to a point where by the time we get to about 2032, we've got a sustainable model moving forward. So if you think about the fact it took 30 or 40 years for us to get here to this position, we're working our way out of it in about 11 or 12 years, with that first 7 years really addressing a backlog of needs. So what does that look like from a bill comparison perspective? So we looked at our bills we expanded our comparison because we wanted to have a sense for how this looks across the Front Range. We looked at this for 6,000 gallons because that's a good median number that averages the summer usage and the winter usage, so that throughout the course of the year, 6,000 gallons is probably a decent number. It's probably low if you were to look at the whole Front Range. But for Englewood, our customers use less water because we don't have big, gigantic Kentucky bluegrass yards around. Something we did add this year that you see in there is mill levy, and that's the pink, because there are a number of water utilities throughout the Front Range that actually have their water and sewer bill, but they also have a mill levy that's on their annual property tax that goes to their water systems. And so you might have heard from someone outside of Englewood saying, well, my bill is so much lower than Englewood's, but they could be living in an area that has a significant mill levy. I think one of the ones up there is Platte Canyon. You can see their numbers are pretty low when you look at the water and sewer bill, but then you add the mill levy on top of it, and then all of a sudden the amount of money, the amount of funding to the water utility goes up to the point where it bumps them more towards the middle. We do not have the ability to do an ad valorem tax, or we do, but we have never, the council has never voted to do an ad valorem tax for a mill levy for the water system. Right now, we don't think that's necessary. We don't think it's something that we have to do, as long as we continue to work on building a sustainable financial model over time. So you can see, based on where we are right now, Englewood is still near the bottom at 67.52, 6,000 gallons. Well, right now we're at the bottom for water and sewer combined bill. With this, with the rate increase of 4.5%, the increase of the CIP by $1, and then the addition of this $5 fund, this $5 lead fee, we move to second lowest, with Littleton now moving into the lowest slot. However, we don't know what they're anticipating for rate increases for next year as well. So we anticipate that gap between the 73 and 78 to close, to be coming closer. Message being is we're still really affordable, even with this new fee that we're proposing. So if we move that to, what does it look like for a 2,000 gallons? Because we hear this, well, I only use 2,000 gallons. So what does that mean? You can see we're no longer at the bottom, moves us more towards the middle, but we're definitely far from where the top is. If you use 10,000 gallons, we move right to the bottom again. So as people use water and use more water, we actually we are more affordable as a utility. So we wanted to look at this from a total utility bill, because people in Englewood get a utility bill and it includes stormwater. So the coloring on this is a little bit hard to see, but you can see we've added our best research for stormwater funding sources or stormwater taxes or bills in these areas. We are doing more work on this because the challenge with stormwater is if you're out on the east, if you're in the area of Arapahoe County, the Arapahoe County Wastewater Authority, you actually are served by Southeast Metro Stormwater Authority. And they have a different charge that is charged to you. So you may either get a different bill or it's a tax. And so the problem is these districts for stormwater don't necessarily file the same district lines like they do for Englewood or like they would for a place like Castle Rock or someplace that has all three utilities defined. So we're trying to pull that information as well. You can see even with the charges that we're proposing, and then you add the stormwater on top of it, we're still in the affordable range. We're not at the bottom anymore, but we're near the bottom, and we're definitely under the average. We think that average is actually going to bump up because we don't think we're capturing all the stormwater charges throughout the comparison areas, but we're doing the best to try and help you understand that we're trying to compare as closely as possible, apples to apples to apples, for a customer who is in Platte Valley or is in Centennial or is in Denver or is in Castle Rock or is in Longmont, to try and help the Water and Sewer Board and the council see that we're still, even with these proposals, affordable. We also recognize that as time goes on, the nutrient and regulatory pressures on South Platte Renew are going to just continue to increase. The needs for the water utility, we think, will stabilize for Englewood, with the exception of we do have to build towards that sustainable model for capital investment, which we think about 7 or 8 years to get there. But overall, we think that we will continue as a utility to remain under the average for the Front Range and on the lower end of that Front Range average. So what are we recommending? We are recommending a lead reduction program fee of $5 a month. That'll generate $666,600 annually, and that will be to help supplement the revenue needed to offset the debt service for the bipartisan infrastructure law debt for the lead program, as well as the leverage loan debt for the program. You can see we are not putting forth a charge that will address the full 1.9 million estimated amount. We are trying to balance that, so we're using this to generate what's about a third of what we think the debt service is, and then continue with our plan for the ongoing rate increase of about 4.5%. That creates, we have a sustainable operations side. It's when we're looking at the capital investment side that we're trying to build a longer term sustainable financial model for the utility. So we would continue to recommend for this year the $1 increase for the capital investment fee. And then we will be bringing back in the next year, 2 years, a model that ramps that capital investment fee so that by 2032, we've gotten to a point of sustainability for the utility in the long run. That was a lot of information on how we've worked to build a sustainable financial model for a utility that needed way more investment than we had money for. And I'm going to stop here to see if there's any questions or any thoughts and we still have to go through sewer, which is pretty straightforward. And then Tim will take some time on stormwater as well, which is also, I believe, fairly straightforward.
Peter, unless you have a strong objection, I might suggest we go ahead and get all three on the table.
Okay.
And then discuss at the end. Let's try that.
We'll keep going then. South Platte Renew, we are actually in the process. So South Platte Renew, if you all recall, is a joint venture between Littleton and Englewood. It's owned 50-50. It serves a much larger area than City of Englewood or City of Littleton. We serve about 300,000 people in the southwest metro area. You can see the population split in the upper right corner. The area is 108 square miles, goes all the way south into Roxborough. On the east side, it goes all the way south to essentially about Ridgegate Parkway. 19 connector districts, 13 of which come through Englewood, the 8 that go through Littleton. That does not total 19 because 2 of them come through both of us. Our strategic priorities for South Platte Renew are proactive long-range planning and investment, fiscal responsibility and transparency, heavy focus on innovation and partnerships. If the councils have heard about our pilot research center and our approach to addressing our significant issues that we're going to have for South Platte Renew in about the 2035 to 2040 timeframe, and how we are working to get in front of that to drive down those costs, which is actually already working for us, which has been great to see. Heavy focus on safety since we are a large, complex industrial facility, and then heavy focus on the employee experience because we want to retain top talent to make sure that we're getting the best results from our staff. So our capital plan that's shown here. This is our capital plan from last year moved into this year. We just got we've been working on our 5-year master plan update. So every 5 years you do a comprehensive overhaul to your master plan. We just got the results of the preliminary results of the capital plan, and it adjusts some of the timing of these projects. It deprioritizes some, reprioritizes some. Essentially, if you go to the next slide, basically the fundamental takeaway, and we'll have this information as we finalize the master plan, is that 73,688,000. We anticipate the 5-year to be approximately 80 million. We've talked to both city sewer enterprise funds. So Sarah on Englewood side, Tiffany Hooten, who's the CFO or the finance director for City of Littleton, about a sustained average of around 16 million, which then totals 80 million. And we anticipate that and both funds are able to accommodate that. So we'll have more refined, better detail on this. These projects are generally the same, but there is new timing and new estimates for how we're going to invest. And that is it for South Platte Renew. I'm going to turn it over to Tim to talk about stormwater.
Thanks, Peter. All right, so stormwater CIP, we've got funding sources that are pretty much the same as we've had for the past years. We've had the 10 million enterprise bond that was issued in July 2021. We've used that, and then we have the more recent 26 million water pollution control revolving fund proceeds that we received in October, which is mainly being used for the South Englewood flood reduction project. It's funding all of that. And then the Mile High Flood District, we do have 50-50 matching funds. You'll see on the budget slide here how much we're getting from them, that we're trying to leverage as much of their funding as we can and match that to be able to do more stormwater improvements. And we do anticipate a 5% inflationary user rate increase this year to fund the ongoing capital needs, just to make sure we keep up with that cost of construction. And then we do also are going to look at doing a 5-year rate study next year to fund the viability of meeting our debt service and then the operating capital needs in future years. Because the way we're at right now, we've pretty much maxed out the borrowing power of the stormwater fund with the rates we have, so we don't really have a lot of room to borrow or do any more bonding unless we do something with the rates. So we want to look at that and see needs versus cost and kind of see how that plays out. So then on the bottom there, just the grants we pursued previously, we didn't get those FEMA grants that we went for. They were not awarded, so that's how we ended up with the loan to get the South Englewood project off the ground. Next slide. So our focus with stormwater is mainly the mapping and inventory and condition assessment. We did the north half of the system last year, and this year we're doing the south half of the system. So by the end of the year, we hope to have a complete map, inventory, and condition assessment of all of these stormwater assets in the city and be able to start prioritizing repairs and maintenance as needed to make sure the system we have is functioning the way it should. And then, the goal is obviously to maintain the system in a more proactive manner and be ahead of problems, so we don't have sinkholes and surprises and things like that. We can know where the problems are and get them fixed before they turn into a sinkhole. So and then the improvements we'll construct or that provide additional capacity and system reliability over the years as we identify needs and areas of improvement. And then the fiscal year 2024 project update, the ones we have underway now, the South Englewood flood reduction project that started here late last year. So we, two phases there. We have the pond and the piping, and then the Oxford outfall pipeliner. The pipeliner is just about done. They're probably about a week or two away from having that all done. So that Oxford pipe should not be a sinkhole problem for us anymore. We finally were able to get that liner done. And then the pond and the piping is should be done late this year, or early in 2025. So, the Old Hammond Utilities Improvement Project, we have the plans are 95% done. We're working finalizing a lot of utility crossings on that project that we have to consider and make sure we're going to be able to miss all the other utilities out there or get them relocated. We don't want to get into a situation where we're having to field design things. So we've been looking at those plans a little closer. And we expect to start construction on that in late summer on that project to get that done. And that's going to be ahead of the Old Hampton Complete Streets grant project we have, where we're going to do the bike lanes and the wider sidewalks and things there to be able to get more multimodal transportation through that corridor. Then the inventory and condition assessment, like I said, the north of US 285 has been cleaned and mapped, and we have that data now we're analyzing. And then the south portion is just getting ready to start here in the next week or two. The contractor is ready to start cleaning and televising, and then we'll get it all mapped out and have all that data, and then we can be able to kind of start prioritizing where the weak spots in the system are, what we need to do to repair them. And this next slide kind of shows how we're focusing the money. I guess this is more of our overall fund balance here that shows the estimated balance here is 7 million, and then the sources include that loan. That's why that goes up so much higher. And then obviously the uses are, that's going to pretty much take all the money to construct the South Englewood flood reduction project. So we expect to have a balance of around 9.5 million at the end of the year for future needs in projects and programs. So here's the 5-year plan for stormwater. As you see, the annual totals go down over the years as we use all the loan money. The rates don't support much more than about $1 million a year for capital improvements. So we've got that kind of programmed out here. But for 2025, we've got that hospital project, Old Hammond, about 500,000 left to finish on that. We anticipate early next year. And then we do have 2 million budgeted to finish up the South Englewood project for mostly landscaping and fencing and things we think we'll probably still be finishing up early next year. And then the repair, rehabilitate existing storm sewer, that's one of our 5-year programs, and that's going to be the project where we do go in, and when we find those bad pipes from the inspection, that we go in and replace those pipes and then make sure they're not going to create a sinkhole in the future. So we have money put aside each year to prioritize those and get those done. And then these next 2 projects are our 2 projects we have with the Mile High Flood District. We've got the Dry Gulch, Harbor Gulch Master Drainage Replan. That's in the northeast part of the city there, heading into the city of Denver. And so we've got that funding put away. That's the money we provide for that. And those 2 numbers are, the flood district's going to provide that same amount. So we should have a pretty good chunk of money there to do some initial projects. Then the South Englewood Drainage Replan, that's our other flood district 50-50 project there. And we're still finalizing the master plan with the flood district to understand where the priority is there. And if we do need any more improvements in the South Englewood Basin, that's where that'll go first. If not, that'll be put to the next priority in the city there. So we've put away some good money for that as well. And then the small area drainage improvements there, that's a project we're going to start annually, and that's where we go in and we have isolated areas that maybe will have a drainage issue. There's a ponding in a certain intersection or in front of a certain few houses or properties. There's an isolated problem that we can go in and do some piping or inlet improvements there, very localized, and do a lot of good. So we're going to use that money for a lot of those. We've identified maybe a dozen of those areas right now that are just places we need to upsize an inlet or upsize a pipe and just increase the capacity there to make sure it functions a little better. So we're going to start prioritizing those projects and make sure we can get those done and still be able to improve the system where we can with the funding we have. I think that's everything we have on the storm drain there. So any questions or anything?
So that is our total presentation for the 3 utilities. So Chair, I would turn it back over to you.
And I'll start again. This is just informational for us. We're not actually needing to vote or anything. So this is just, the floor is open for questions. Marjan, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry. I can't remember the page number, but if, Pieter, will you please go back to the page that it goes through the steps before all the graphs starts?
Sure.
Thank
So
you.
the timeline.
You know where it has all the, yeah, you got to go like, I think about maybe more than 12 pages. Yeah, right there. Right.
Oh,
No,
that one.
that one. Yeah.
The list or this one?
No, forward, please. Forward. There you go, this one.
Okay.
Is this like in some sort of a pattern? I was just looking at this while we were speaking about it and going through this. Is this is like in some sort of a systematical prediction? Am I correct?
We have looked at all the needs of the system from source water all the way through customer line to the house and figured out how to address all of them at once while prioritizing based on risk and funding availability and funding need.
Okay, so I don't know. And this was my assumption, and I don't want to assume anything. I felt like everything is kind of okay. We got to do this, and then get to the end. I was just wondering, once you finish with the program, because it seems like that the cost, like after the next graph that it shows, like after all those great, yeah, when you go and break through it, and you see how much more is going to end up. And you said the inflation was considered 3.5%, which right now we're at 3.7. But then you look at the increase, and I'm thinking, okay, once all the expenses goes away, then shouldn't we have is that like prediction that there is the cost is going to be 3 times higher, or am I misunderstanding this? Also, I was wondering, my other question is, and I know you're going to give me a detailed question. Thank you so much. This might come from my confusion, okay? But also, when you go through all these regulations, and in the last page, you could see that like we go over this, going through the regulations and going through all of that. My question is, okay, so after you go through all of these preventative and doing all this great work, does it look like that once we pay that off, does it look like, are you predicting like the regulation on that will change? And I know I'm asking you for it's impossible to predict the future based on what it would be in the year 2030 and above. But if you go back, are you predicting that there would be regulations that would increase the cost tremendously for the residents of Englewood?
So I'll answer the second one first. So as it relates to regulations, what we know is out there is PFAS. Nationally, water systems do not know what the requirement's going to be on a water system to address PFAS. And so where we are paying attention to that with our financing plan is we want to make sure that we have available capacity to issue debt if we need to make some kind of a change that's significant to address PFAS needs in a way that doesn't cause us to have to cash fund it where we spike rates. And so issuing debt allows us to modestly raise rates as opposed to spiking rates to create cash. If we were to address what's under this, which is under this curve, with just cash and rate increases, our bill would be so far unsustainable and would have exceeded probably all the comparisons at that point in time, which is why in order to address it now, issuing low interest loan debt allows us to address the problem today and then over time pay that off. And if you remember, these systems are 30, 40, 50-year systems. And so what that does is it distributes the payment such that today's ratepayers aren't paying all of it. People 20 years from now are paying their proportionate share through that low interest loan, that debt. So that's the first piece.
Yes, you kind of distribute it through all the, yes.
That's right. We're trying to smooth it so that it's not, you don't get these spikes.
Yes.
And so the second piece of it is really, this is the initial slug of what we perceive as the most immediate needs for the utility and the most immediate regulatory drivers, of which we know lead is a regulatory driver nationally. And we're on the front end of getting this addressed while funding's available, as opposed to waiting until the last minute when who knows if funding's available. when you get into the outer years of 2031 and later, we still have ongoing investment in the pump stations, ongoing investment in the water distribution system, ongoing investment in the treatment plant, ongoing investment in the valve program, ongoing investment in the raw water system. So what we're talking about as you get into those outer years is a sustainable revenue amount from a capital perspective, such that we don't do all this work and then stop investing for 20 years again and have the problem all replicate all over again in the 2040 timeframe. That's where we're going to work over the next 3 to 5 years to help build a model that will get us to the point so that in 2031, 2032, we've hit this sustainable state where the operations is handled by those annual 4.5% rate increase. And then the capital investment fee is funded such that that's addressing the ongoing sustainable capital needs. So you have the two charges essentially that are addressing the operational and variable costs versus the capital and essentially fixed costs. And then within that is within the capital side is that lead fee as well. So the problems don't go away. It's just we're trying to deal with the slug of problems right now and then build something for long-term sustainability.
I know my question to some degree was extremely unfair to you. I just was trying to see what is your expertise in this prediction of what's going, because to be honest with you, everything I read is just so frustrating, because when you look at it, like they're putting Roundup all over our crops and they're getting class action suits, and we know they're extremely toxic, and yet the regulations passes them, and then 30-50 years down the road and they're like, oh, this one is killing you, and now we're going to give you a loan, and now you can remove this out of the water, now we're going to charge you for it, and then so you turn around and you're like, okay, I feel like I'm just
well, that's our national, I mean, that is a national frustration with EPA's rules around PFAS. So right now on the South Platte side, we're working with the state legislature to try to ban the use of PFAS in products in the state of Colorado. And the lobbyists for the product makers of those products have gotten a hold of that bill and have stripped a lot of the restrictions out of it, such that we can't even pass a local ban on PFAS. So at the national level, the EPA is saying, water providers, you're the ones that collect all the PFAS, so it's your problem to take it out. And so that becomes basically the cost of all the water users. And so this is the tension in the PFAS realm right now, and we don't anticipate that that's going to necessarily go away anytime soon. And who knows what the next chemical is? And I think you're right on that.
Yeah, I
We
just
don't
signed a
know what the next
petition
chemical
myself
is.
that
Yeah.
the EPA is passing an extremely dangerous chemical that to put on crops, and we have to remove it. But I want to thank your team for doing such a great job of trying to balance this extreme giant project. And despite of all their obstacles that you have on your path, that is very difficult, and it's a big job, and I appreciate, and I also think there is a lot of variables that unfortunately small cities cannot. I have one question for you, if I could. May I ask that question?
Marjan, I need to give others a chance. We'll circle back if we
Okay.
can.
Okay,
Peter,
yeah.
just to be clear, we've got one more
Yep.
still substantial discussion topic after this
Yes, sir.
section, right?
Yes,
Peter?
we do. And
Okay, so
I think it's fairly quick, but I think it's still going to take about 15 minutes.
all right, so just everyone, so we know we still got one more 15-minute subject to go that I've kicked the can down the road 3 or 4 meetings now. Cammie, do you want to go ahead and get your question in?
Yeah, yes, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I just
Yeah,
had
and
a,
hold on, I'm sorry, real quick. Can we go ahead and remove the presentation from the screen
Oh yeah, sorry.
so I can see more people? All right, great. Thank you very much. Okay, go ahead, Cammie.
great. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I
Yes.
just had a quick question. There's a lot of projects that were on the list, and I am curious, I know some projects we just have to do because that's part of upgrading and sort of, keeping up with our system. However, I saw a lot of projects that are specific to improvements and creating efficiencies, and increasing the effectiveness of our system. I am curious if there are performance metrics associated with all of those projects, and if so, how are those reported back to the board? We're talking about a lot of money. We're talking about increasing rates. We're talking about impacting our ratepayers. And I want to make sure that the projects and the things that we approve here as a board, that we're understanding when projects are successful, and that is somehow being reported back in some way, shape, or fashion to the board. Or I don't know if you guys do quarterly reports or what that looks like, but are you tracking those KPIs, and how is that being communicated back to us?
So I think the most significant thing that we've done in the last 2 years to help us gain a trend of the customers' perceptions is we do an annual customer survey now where we ask questions around specifically taste, odor, and hardness, because that is our most significant, somewhat nebulous problem that we have that requires both optimization at the Allen plant, as well as maintenance and work in the distribution system, as well as the city ditch, the raw water sourcing project with city ditch. And so what we're trying to track with that is to see through that customer service survey an improvement to people's experience with taste, odor, and hardness. Once the city ditch comes online, we have data that shows what the hardness level will be coming from city ditch year round versus coming from Union Avenue. And so we would expect that after that project is complete in 2025, that we'll see the feedback through that customer survey show us that there is an improvement. Additionally, we have a multitude of information that we have to submit as part of our annual consumer confidence report. So there's a number of things that we have to report on that we have now turned into an annual report, which is essentially an annual report of what the utility is doing, what the water utility is doing. So there's a number of just metrics that we have to report by that's required by CDPHE as it relates to our treatment performance and our system performance. So that's another area where we track metrics. As far as longer term, the way we'd be looking at tracking metrics is through a more integrated asset management approach to really understand whether the timing, whether it's more important, or whether it makes more sense to continue to invest in an existing system, or if that life cycle cost over 20 years is such that it's no longer worth it to invest, that we would install a new system. So we're moving towards that ability to decide when is the right time to make a large scale investment versus a smaller scale ongoing investment. And I think the last thing I would say is about a year ago, we came back at the 3-year mark and reported out all the projects that we had made progress on in that 3-year period, from the time of 2020, when we essentially had no program or no project in place, to the status of where that project or program is. And so our intention is to do that generally on an annual basis in the fall, to help holistically the board and council see where we're making those projects, where we're making that progress.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. I would just sort of, encourage us to make sure that we're focusing on really objective data whenever we're looking at that. I think the customer survey data that you're talking about is extremely subjective, and I understand that's a data point that we want to collect. However, as a board, I would really like to see some very objective data whenever we're talking about improvements in the system. So that's all I had. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Was there any questions in the room? There's no more hands raised online. Okay. Marjan, do you want to squeeze in your other one and hopefully keep it short?
Yes, I'll make it fast, Chair. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Peter, when we finish with these obligations, with these loans, it always like this is and this is my gut feeling. It really, I just feel like does these organizations have power over the decision the city of Englewood makes for its residents? Because one of the things that I really I hope that's not happening is that they give us a little bit of loan and they get a whole lot of control over the city. I really think that control should be in the hand of the citizens of the Englewood to make those decisions. And I want to know what is your answer.
The only additional control or steps that I would say is that there are some compliance metrics in some of these loans in terms of how we issue work that we have to comply with. So we have to use USA Iron and Steel. We have to use Davis Bacon wages, which actually in this area is not that difficult because Davis Bacon wages are the same as the competitive wage around here, so they're the same. So there are some requirements in these loan documents in terms of how we execute our projects, but they aren't anything that is a heavy hand in controlling how we decide to operate or control our system. That comes from CDPHE and the EPA through their regulations that they impose on us. These loans really just give us funding as long as we're in compliance with those federal requirements. They're pretty hands off.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jim.
All right. All right. Thanks for the board's patience on running long. Peter, let's go ahead and move on to 8A.
Okay, this is a quick one. We wanted to talk to the board and council about this because the good news on our sewer system was we did a complete TV camera assessment of the entire system over the last year and a half, and we have a really great baseline of our system. Our system is an older system. It's a lot of clay pipe, but fortunately, the great thing about clay pipe is if you don't disturb it, it lasts a really, really long time, and it's a really, really good solution. It's once like tree roots get in it or there's some kind of a damage because of the shifting, if someone is digging next to it. So our system as a whole is actually in pretty good shape. So whereas we were originally anticipating we were going to have to do a number of line replacements because of deterioration to the system, in reality, our video shows that our sewer system is actually in pretty decent shape. Same thing with our manholes. Our manholes, we thought we were going to have to do a lot more lining of our manholes. Our manholes aren't in too bad a shape. However, we do have some problems with our sewer system. And what those problems are is sewer systems that were built at a time when there probably weren't strong codes or regulations in terms of how development occurred in the city back in probably like the 40s and the 50s. And what you can see on this map is a problem that was presented by a customer in the sewer service area, because in the red box, you can see there are several homes that are connected to a common line that doesn't necessarily meet our current standards. Each individual service line connects to a 6-inch line, which then connects into the main sanitary interceptor. There's no access points through manholes to clean it out, but there's also no common maintenance agreement among the homeowners in terms of who's responsible for what reach of the system. They're often referred to as common community mains, which is what you see as the title. And they were a way to, probably because of gravity, they were a way to flow a certain set of houses a different direction such that, because they couldn't flow it uphill towards the east, so they had to flow it to the west. And you see this a lot in commercial areas, and where it works fine in commercial areas is because there's a common maintenance agreement, there's a common interest, and it's all within the private property of that commercial area. In this instance, this is the issue that's most recently come up. This is actually in the street right away. And so in reality, it's off the individual homeowners' properties. It's right near the sidewalk, so it's within the street right away. It's a line that doesn't necessarily meet our regulations, and thereby is causing a larger problem for these homeowners. So we have a few of these through the city, not many, but a few. And so our proposal on this is to use some of our sewer funds to take a phased step-by-step approach to addressing these community mains or these common mains in a way that we would start by initially installing a manhole to see if we can just get clean out access. And if the line is working fine, then we install a manhole and now we can clean it out and we put it into our maintenance schedule for that line. If it turns out that doesn't work well, then we would take an incremental step of then upsizing the line ultimately to the point where we would replace the whole line. We would recommend that for, I believe we have 3 or 4 locations throughout the city that are like this. While we were researching this, we found a much more significant, stay on that, if you stay on that, or do we go to the?
We go to it.
Okay, we go to it. So we found a bigger problem. So you can see, so keep going. So, yep, keep going. So this is our bigger problem. So at some point in time, back in, who knows when, the 50s, I would assume, this line was installed.
Screen just went blank.
Oops.
So nobody touched anything.
No.
And it just went blank right when we get to the,
Can you
The
guys still see the screen?
Online,
Yes.
yes.
okay, you can still see the screen. Okay, so I can
Yes.
describe this, I can describe this by heart. So you see how that curvy line goes through the center?
Second from last page.
You see how that curvy line goes through the center?
Yeah.
Well, so where the red box is, that curvy 10-inch sewer main goes right under houses, which is a terrible way to build a community. So this line is actually, we believe it's about 2,200 feet of line that probably followed some gravity path, and then, yes, 2,212 feet, and it followed a gravity path when it was first installed, and then developers came in later, platted this whole area, and essentially built a community on top of this line without creating a corridor or an easement like we would do today. So we think this is a fairly significant exposure for our city, and as well as the homeowners who have a house that's sitting right on top of a large sanitary sewer. Our community main that we just talked about connects to this line. This is the most significant of these that we've found throughout the sewer system. Our thought on this would be to use our sewer fund monies to over time address this issue and get the flow through this line out from underneath people's homes. We think that is just a problem waiting to happen, a significant problem waiting to happen. So the reason why I'm bringing it we were bringing it is, whereas we were originally thinking we were going to have to fix a significant part of the system that was deteriorated. Good news, it's not in that bad a shape. Bad news, we've got some really bad system setups through here. So we wanted to talk to the board, as well as we're going to talk to the council in a study session on this, about making this essentially the programmatic fix approach that we focus our funds towards with the sewer system, because these are lines that should be in the right of way. They should be, because they're serving multiple individual home properties, they should be maintained by the city as part of the larger sewer network. But it was a bit of a surprise. You know, it's not often that I'm actually surprised by things, but this one was a bit of a shock when we saw it. So it's just an interesting quirk of the Englewood sewer system that we wanted to bring to council, and then ultimately make sure that you're all okay with the direction we're going to take with this.
All right, Marshawn, go ahead.
Peter, does this have this all of a sudden? I mean, it's been like that for a long time, right? How many years would you say?
I would expect it's, we don't know exactly, but I would expect that it's based on the age of the houses. I think it's at least 60 years.
Okay, all right. And does this have anything to do with new res?
Have to do with what?
Does this have anything to do with like they're like wanting to address it? That does it have anything to do with new res? You know, with all these developers coming and building, no.
Not even not connected at all.
Okay.
The community main piece is really because these homeowners have experienced a problem and are continuing to experience a problem, and there's no real clear definition as to who should be maintaining that. We interpret it, I mean, this is an interpretation, is it's in the right of way. It just doesn't meet our standards, which means the city can make some improvements to it and then maintain it as part of the sewer system network.
Yeah,
The
definitely.
diagonal mess that goes under people's houses, that's a different longer term problem that has probably been in place for 50 or 60 years. But we believe is an exposure risk that we should over time invest to take care of.
I agree as well. Thank you.
Peter, I'll ask one. I mean, so you think there is a solution to be found for that problem? I mean, that looking at them, it's certainly not obvious how you reroute a sewer and connect all those houses so far after the fact.
What I would expect is that I would expect that it's going to probably be some form of fix that needs to be phased. And the goal would be to get as much of it into the street right away as possible. We may have to look at an installation of a lift station. The city has no lift stations right now, but this might be one of those locations where it just makes sense to put a lift station. But we don't know. We don't really know what the solution is yet. Our overriding approach would be to keep it gravity, because gravity systems are just easier to maintain in the long term. But we don't know what the solution is. And we do believe it's going to be a phased approach, because we don't think it's going to be inexpensive to reroute this 2,200 feet of line. Yeah. Otherwise, they probably would have done it in the 60s.
So what does the risk look like? I mean, so what could go wrong, and what would be the consequences of it if it's left alone?
I think the risk is that we don't have so if there was some kind of a let's say that something got into the sewer system, there was a rag, like a wipes ball that, got to the point where it plugged the sewer system and created a pressure condition that could propagate backwards and create significant problems under people's houses, to the point where we can't maintain it. And so now you've got this system that's plugged, and there's no place to take the wastewater, even if because you can't easily get to the problem. That's an off-the-cuff response of what could potentially go wrong. I think that the challenge is the fact that homes sit on top of it is it increases a level of risk that long-term I think our utility system would be would benefit from addressing that risk.
Okay. Any other questions for Pieter?
Peter,
Do you,
this
go
is
ahead.
the Englewood area, but I live in the South Englewood Sanitation District. Do we have any idea or any control over what they do? Is there a possibility that they have a similar problem?
I'm not sure if they have a similar problem. It's possible. I too, full disclosure, I also live in that South Englewood Sanitation District area. We video, or we clean the, we have a contract with them to clean the
Okay.
system that's within our city. So we maintain the system. Their responsibility is to make capital investments in the system. And so we maintain it, they capital invest in it. And really there's one issue right now that I think they need to be making an investment, and they're not the easiest ones. They're not the easiest group to get a hold of. And because they're a small community sewer district that doesn't necessarily have a significant amount of resources. But what I will say is they are lining all of the pipes within the City of Englewood portion of South Englewood Sanitation District.
Okay.
But nothing we're aware of. That was Ryan Ratcliffe. Ryan handles all this. He's in our distribution and collections team. He's the manager. So he's the guy that would know. So thank you, Ryan.
Pieter, what would you like from the board with respect to this? Anything?
I think just a general understanding that we think that this is the appropriate use of funds is to initially, our first priority would be to address these common residential systems that were never defined with some kind of a common maintenance agreement. We think we have 3 or 4 of them. Is that about right? Correct. So there's not many of them. The first of which is the one that's creating the problem. We would start with, like I said, installing a manhole, and maybe that solves the problem, and we just put it on a maintenance schedule so that we can get access to it. Same thing with the other ones, is seeing how we can incrementally make those improvements to take them over as part of the utility system, and then incrementally improve to the point where they work long-term without issue. And then the bigger issue is a larger strategy to address that line that's under all those houses.
Yeah, so I'll just speak individually. I think that on the first issue, I think it's just strikes me as just something that we inherited, but it's just better for the city overall to adopt the collection parts that are in the right of way as our own and do what's right for it. So I think that, personally speaking, I think that makes sense. And on the bigger other problem, I would agree it's something that warrants study. I still am nervous about what the solution is and whether or not it's something that can be fixed or just has to be mitigated as long as possible. But I think it's worth studying and seeing if there's a feasible possible solution. But that's just kind of my take, and invite the board to share their other opinions.
Well, and that's what we would propose. Is first step is to figure out what it's going to take to fix this, and is it worth it? That's really the first step.
Any other comments, Marjan? Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, I would imagine that when the opportunity, when they want to build a newer house there would be wonderful too, to be able to create a new line. And so then part of that would be taken care of, and then that kind of give priority to that, because it makes sense. That would be the best time to add it. I don't know, but I thought with my little unknowledgeable mind, I thought maybe that would be the perfect time if somebody's building a new house, that would be the time to address some of that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good comment, that as things redevelop, we definitely know that this is here. And I want to go back to the comment I just made. I didn't want to be flippant and say, is it worth it or not? It's really a matter of, it's a risk analysis, and is the cost versus the risk. That's the result that we want to understand so that we can bring that to the board and say, in order to mitigate this cost, mitigate this risk, here's that cost, and is that something that's the appropriate use of funds? That, Chair, that would be that first step.
Yep. Good. Any other final comments before we move on? Questions or comments? All right, very good. Peter, anything else for us?
I think that is, we don't have anything else, right? I think that is it for us and staff.
Board, still an opportunity if you have another subject you want to raise. Otherwise, we can wrap. Anything else? All right. With that then, thank you all for your patience in getting through this tonight. Appreciate it, and we are adjourned. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.